In this episode, my friend Eugene Barnes sits down with me again. He's been a guest previously, and we just catch up on what he's been doing over the last 2.5 years practicing the infinite banking concept. We had a lovely conversation. This man is full of wisdom. I enjoyed it, and I hope you do as well. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the Make It Live podcast. I'm your host, James Neathery. And listen, I'm excited to have my friend Eugene Barnes with us today. He is a friend and a client, been a friend. I guess we've known each other a couple of years now.
This past June.
Oh, okay. And you have been a guest previously, and I'm just telling you, people love you, and I do too. And so, thanks for coming back on, Eugene. How in the world have you been, sir?
I have been just fine, James. I have been fine. I told my wife the other day I was thinking about going back to Vietnam and Iraq without a gun. I was doing so well.
Hey, it may be a place to visit nowadays. I don't know, 60 years later. Yeah. 50 years later. All right.
Yeah, man.
Well, listen, catch us up. What have you been doing? How's it going? How have you been?
Well, periodically, I've been still telling people about the infinite banking concept, and since the day I've heard of it, until right now as we speak, it's still the best thing I've been involved in years gone by, relative to saving any money and growing wealth to any degree. It's although it's not like becoming extremely wealthy overnight, it is the constant growth that keep you exciting about what you're involved in.
One way. It might be slow, but it only goes one way. That's for sure.
Only goes one way.
You know, are you familiar with Jim Rohn? He's passed on now, but I'm a student of Jim Rohn, and he said one time, he said, it's hard to get rich quick. He said, it's easy to get wealthy with time. So time, there is an element, no question, in anything that we do, gathering up knowledge, gathering up wealth. It does take time, but, of all the things out there in the big wide world, people could put their money to, and time helps them as well. I don't care where you put money, if things go well, if there's only one direction, if I'm going to pile up money somewhere and it's going to go up and down, up and down, up and down, I mean, how much time is it going to take? I don't know. But if I put money somewhere and it only goes one way, I like that better. I'm more comfortable with that,
Amen to that.
All right. So, what are you doing with yourself these days? You're a man of leisure, right? You've, left a career some years ago. I can't recall how many, but
what 2007.
2007.
Yeah, I think about 16 years this year.
Wow.
And last year, in this same month, my wife hit a deer coming from work. But before then, I was doing nothing with a capital N. And about her coming home at night, that I've been hired as a permanent driver. I'm a permanent chauffeur now, whether I like it or not.
You're a driver, huh?
I'm a driver. Okay. And I had to buy another car. Well, I still have the same one that they had an accident, but I had to have another car, and I wasn't quite as strong as I needed to be then, but thanks to the infinite banking concept, I was able to get this car and hit it with a good blow, and things are still just going well.
Perfect.
Things is going well. And when we were talking about what everyone else is running to, you run from. What they're running from, you run to.
Yeah.
I say, if a man tells me that sits on $110 billion, I kind of like open my ears to a little bit of what he has to say. And I thought about a song that was sung by Dobie Gray back in the 60s about in with the in crowd. You remember that song?
No, but educate me.
I forget. I might have a couple of years on you, I believe that. But I'm in with the in crowd, and I go where the in crowd go. I'm in with the in crowd, and I know what the in crowd know. You said I'm in with the in crowd, and I know every ladies dance. I'm in with the in crowd, and where you can easily find romance. And this, from a financial perspective, that's what a lot of people are doing. They're in with the in crowd. Mm-hmm. It may be. I thought of that song, but when you're not being taught anything, and you're not walking among the wise to be wise. Now I know I'll tell people that you are a disciple and follower of Nelson Nash in the financial arena. Mm-hmm. And when I look back at the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and Walt Disney and 8 or 7 of all United States presidents and people like that, and the people that had been extremely beneficial. Then I think about the 1% that control the other 99% of the world wealth. And in Nelson Nash's book on the Warehouse of Wealth, I think in there he said, it was said that if you divided all the wealth equally among all the families in the world within a year, that 1% would still be controlling most of the world's wealth, because most people feel like they need someone else to handle their money rather than educate themselves. I mean, that is really sad. So I like to say to those people, if you buy a new car, you buy any kind of new car, well, you want me to keep it for you and drive it for you and come pick you up on your new car? I mean, it's the same scenario, just in a different form.
Yeah. Well, and you're busy anyway. You're driving your wife around in her new car. You ain't got time to drive. That's true, though. That's right.
What a privilege. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's easy to go along with the crowd. You know, it's a little tougher to do something different and get out of your comfort zone and think outside the box or think differently. It can be a challenge. But if you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else is getting. Right?
Exactly right.
Yeah. And you look at, we kind of talked about 401ks, prior to turning the mic on, and, and a 401k, it just is what it is, right? It's a government qualified plan, going to give you a tax break today so you can save money for your retirement. Well, that's hogwash. It ain't savings, number one, and you're not getting a tax break. You're postponing a tax consequence, right? So, exactly. Yeah, you get a tax deduction in this year, but you're going to pay taxes on that money and withdraw. And who knows what the future tax brackets are going to be? But Eugene, they make it very easy nowadays. When you go to work somewhere, you have to opt out of a 401k plan once you're eligible, right? You're automatically enrolled in it if they have it and you're eligible for it. Well, back in the day, we don't have to go that many years back, 10 years at most. You had to opt into the 401k, right? So now you have to opt out. They make it very easy. And now they use target date funds. You just pick a date in the future, a year in the future, 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years in the future. And the little portfolio is geared to a retirement in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years, target date funds. And then all they're doing there, and I don't want to oversimplify, but they've dumbed it down to the lowest common denominator. I've got to opt out, so I'm automatically enrolled, and then I'm automatically going to be assigned a target date fund, or they're going to give me choices of a target date fund where I'm going to retire in 20 years or 30 years. And then the difference between those target date funds, the majority of the difference is only an allocation between bonds or equities. So if I'm going to have a 30-year target date fund, it'll be weighted to equities compared to a 5-year or 10-year target date fund. It'll be weighted to bonds. And my point here is that they've dumbed it down to the lowest common denominator. You do what everybody else is doing. You set it and forget it. I'll abdicate my responsibility, just like you alluded to and said. to someone else. Well, and I'm not saying money's the most important thing in the world, because it is not. It is not. But if it comes to creature comforts, and you want a decent income at passive income time or retirement time, you want to do things, you want to go places, you want to buy your wife a new car, whether she hit a deer or not, all of that takes money. So why would we abdicate our responsibility over our money? It makes no sense.
I tell you, it makes none at all.
Just because everybody else is doing it and it's easy, it's hard or challenging to do something different. It's a challenge to change the way we think, or even to open our mind to consider other opportunities. So I'm right with you.
Yeah. And when I listen to you teaching on your podcast, I was telling Betty, I said, Betty, teaching is one thing. Teaching with simplicity is another, and much more exciting to the one being taught, because he's being enlightened on some things that we didn't hear coming up. A lot of times we have said in times past, like when we were little children, I wish I was a millionaire. I wish I was a millionaire. We do need to have Honey Bun and Pepsi Cola money, and the most of the people we associated one had less than we did. Yeah. And so when what I was getting around to when I say when there is some savvy, fine-tuned teaching with pucker, it can generate nothing more, nothing less than a sweet understanding. And understanding the best thing in the world. Mm-hmm. And it really opened doors and enhanced my learning. One day when I think I had been out of high school at this particular time, about 10, 11 years at the most. And one day I decided to go into the definition of the word study. And I said, how many times have we heard that in years gone by? Millions of people heard the word study and can give you a good, thorough definition. And when I heard it, I had this particular dictionary. It was a 200,000 word Webster dictionary, 160,000 entries. And I haven't heard a definition like that until this day. Even when I Google it, I never found a definition like this one. And this is what it said verbatim. It says, studying is putting your mind into a state of contemplating to feel the application of the mental faculties to acquire knowledge. Such an application to a particular field or specific subject. And it said it is an experimental interpretation and an exploratory analysis of specific features and characteristics. Now, I thought the definition was kind of strong. But when I got into the definitions of the definition, it made it crystal clear. Where it said an exploratory analysis, well, obviously we're talking about exploring and analyzing. So exploring and analyzing what? This particular thing you're involved in. I used to hear my daddy say one time, my mama kind of looked at him strange, like she wanted to contradict him, because to her it probably been sounding solipsistic, self-centered, when he said, whatever you do. Our father just had a third grade education. He said, whatever you do, try to be the best. Well, he probably heard someone else say it, but he truly amazed me on the work that he done as a carpenter and a brick mason. The craftsmanship. When I looked at it years later, it was just as pretty that day as it was the day he finished it. Third grade education. And when he said that, my mama said, oh, babe, as if he said something wrong. Name Floyd Barnes, called him Babe Barnes. And some called him Stonewall Jackson. Every time he started drinking, he was Stonewall Jackson. So Stonewall Jackson said, try to be the best. And that statement, when I said, I gathered from that, when what was this, another adage I was saying was, the more you like yourself, the less you see yourself like anyone else.
Ooh.
It means you are enigmatic and there's a strong resemblance to no one else. And one lady told me, said, well, you know, the Bible said not to think of yourself more highly than you ought to think. I said, ma'am, you missed the whole point. This is for people with low self-esteem and depression and misery. Those people who have had this kind of stuff become a household guest. And it is the incredible display of gloom and doom being his only fate. Low self-esteem people. I said, that's what this statement is all about. Not being egotistical or nothing like that. And so I think she finally got it. Well, people need encouraging in every way, as far as their health, their finances. You need to get with somebody that knows more than you do in the area where you're having problems. And so that's what I try to do, you know, to make things crystal clear for myself as well as anyone else.
Yep.
Because one lady said on one occasion, a motivational speaker say one time, it's a lot easier building a child than it is repairing an adult.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that would be kind of hard, too. But I've needed adult repairs as well as anyone else.
Sure.
But you can minimize those repairs if we just listen and listen to someone who already understands. Amen.
Amen. That's right. That's right. Your daddy's the kind of people I like. You know, Stonewall Jackson.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's going back, you know, the craftsmanship of a bricklayer and a carpenter just dang near doesn't exist today. You know, you go around new construction and, you know, it's just not the craftsmanship. Yeah, they're skilled. Yes, they can get it done. But it's different from when I was growing up. I mean, there was just people, I don't know, and I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but it just seems like people took more pride in their work, you know.
Oh, yes.
And maybe there's even more specialized. I mean, I don't know, but that's pretty cool. And you can look back and see some of the work that your daddy did. That's pretty dang cool.
Yep, so. And that's some cities that I go to every now and then, most of the smaller cities around. And one place in Wilson, North Carolina, kind of an elaborate neighborhood. And I could see the walls where he laid in the name of the division, you know, for the name of the division. The craftsmanship on this wall and stuff like that is still there to this day.
That's pretty cool.
And I worked with him for a little while when I first came out of high school before I really got into my own workforce. And one day I was with him and another man, Mr. Sims, and they were laying a brick, and I was the brick man and the mud man.
Oh, yeah.
Pushing a wheelbarrow full of mud. And, you know, the mortar for the bricks, you know that.
Yes, sir. I've done that myself. Yes, sir. Bricklayer's helper. Yes, sir.
And yeah, that's right. And I started up a board one time going up in the house. They hadn't laid the steps yet, so they had this long board. And I got up there, and they had a whole thing of mud, the mortar, and turned it over.
Hey.
And the other man said to my daddy, he said, Stone, he said he was a man. Is he a man or a boy or a managed boy? I said, a managed boy right now, but I have another wheelbarrow mud in a minute like a man. I said, I'll be a man in a few more minutes.
Give me a minute.
Hard work came, and I've done the hard work, and I was sharing with my pastor when I was getting this back to him since he made that last statement, when he said, where wisdom failed to communicate, the hard pen will make crystal clear. I said he was talking about the Pusillanimous and the Palookas. In other words, the timid, the nervous, and the weak. I don't know if you're old enough to remember Palooka Joe.
No, I'm not.
He was a real nervous fella all of his life. He even wanted to be a professional fighter. He was sort of like a Snuffy Smith newspaper character. And he hung in there from 1930 to 1954 when he finally faded out. 1984 till he finally fell out. I said, for a man to be that nervous and timid and weak, he hung in there for 54 years. He sure beat a lot of the brave. So life is going on as usual. It's still good. We're still trying to make things better. My job, I think I'm here to try to encourage people and sometimes you have to encourage yourself.
Yeah.
When there's no one around to encourage you. If you're not with them in person, then get some of their writings. And, especially from a financial perspective, I'm always listening to the podcast. And I remember the one you done with your wife, Miss Gina. Is it Gina?
Jana, yeah.
Jana,
yeah.
I said, how can you not win, Jane?
Right?
How can you not win? You got Miss Jana. I told Betty she is picture book indefectible. The Proverb 31 woman, and I know you know that, the Proverb 31 woman.
Yes.
And another one I used was Fashion Vogue magazine cover presentable. And I'm sure that when you married her, you had chose your favorite brand of human personality and exclusive elegance. And you tell her I said hello and help you to keep winning.
I will. I will. And she'll say hello back to you. I mean, I've said it previously, that I married up. That was really a situation too where, and I think we told how we met on that episode. I really believe that was God doing something for me that I could not do for myself, because I'd have never picked her and she'd have never picked me, but one of the smartest women I've ever met. And so
Amen.
She's been a joy and continues to be a joy, no question. And, I used to tell Nelson all the time, and same with you and Betty, a successful man can't do what they do without a woman, in my opinion. Now, right. I don't, want to get a bunch of hate mail or whatever for the single guys out there. If you're single and you don't have a spouse, and that's the way you like it and want it, God bless you. But Nelson, Nelson couldn't do what he did without Mary. And you couldn't do what you do without Betty. That's just the way it is, whether you agree or disagree is kind of my position on it. But so.
Excuse me for cutting you off with what you said that just then. Let me say this right quick. And sometimes Betty lets me know that too.
Well, and she should, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. No, I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that. Well, let me ask you. It's kind of a side note, but was the bricklaying didn't suit you? I mean, not just dumping that one bucket of mud or that one wheelbarrow of mud over, but that's not the career you chose. Did you get into carpentry? What did you do, and why did you do something different than what your daddy did?
So what are you asking? Is the turning over of the mud ended my career? No, I just couldn't get the hang of it, James. I just couldn't get the hang of that type of work. Yeah. I liked it, and I really, even after I stopped working with the brick mason and took on my own form career at the Bronson Industries, and from there on to Firestone, and about 43 years of that kind of work. But I still went back from time to time to observe that craftsmanship that him and Mr. Sims and Huggins and the boys have so incredibly displayed. Went back and watched that stuff. And what amazes me when some people make such a big deal. Now, when I say this, I want people to understand that I'm not knocking schooling, not by a long shot. But to see these guys to turn out this kind of work, it's always been amazing to me to see my daddy do stuff like that. And he had a third grade education, and I didn't realize this for a long time. But there was time when I was talking to my daddy, and while he was working, he was like, he would answer me every now and then. Sometimes he wouldn't say nothing at all, but his eyes would always be fixed directly on what he was doing, like he was in a deep concentration. And I guess that's why he was at a master at it. He was one that could really focus. He stayed focused at what he does, unlike me. I'll be talking about some things, looking around, doing some things messed up, then I wonder why that happened. And just messing up to the 10th degree. But I just couldn't get the hang of it.
I got you.
Pulling the string and putting on a block and then laying bricks by the string and all this kind of stuff. It just wasn't for me. And I've seen many cases where a lot of fathers will hound their children into doing what they're doing. But you are a unique individual. Each person was created a unique individual. And not that I was asking God at that time, what did he have for me? But he already knew what he had for me or what was best for me. Yeah, so I just couldn't get into it.
I got you.
Yep.
And so you did what you did for about 43 years, and that you changed up about 16 years ago. And I want to go back to the infinite banking concept and refresh my memory on how, if you would please, how you got exposed to this idea of becoming your own banker, and after you had retired at several years, how did all that occur? What was your experience on there? How did you get exposed to it? And
the way I got exposed to the infinite banking concept was on a James Neathery's podcast.
Really?
I was on the YouTubes one day. A lot of the YouTubes is like this. It has, you may see on a page, there may be 10 or 12 different subjects on cooking, banking, all kinds of stuff, racing. But if you click on one, then it'll show you a whole long of the list that you clicked on.
Right.
And I saw becoming your own bank. And so I clicked that YouTube, and then many more fell in behind it. And I saw a few others, but there was something about James Neathery making this thing so simple and so understandable. I had to look into it. So it was just a matter of time before I gave you a call.
I appreciate that. So just kicking around on the internet, and you pull up something on becoming your own bank, and then the algorithm feeds you up a bunch more, and we resonated through video, and that's cool. I appreciate that. Yep.
And if you remember, when I've done the first podcast was on my birthday.
Was it? No, I don't remember, but thank you for doing that on your birthday.
It was on my birthday, August 16th, 2021.
So
and then we got
a couple of years.
Let's see. Then you was telling us about Nelson Nash, and then I started watching some of his videos and podcasting. So it's just been infinite banking for me ever since.
I got it. Man, you and Nelson would have hit it off. I'll guarantee you. Y'all have had a great time. I promise you. So, so you listen to this podcast. You're reading and you're listening, and you decided to put your hand to the plow. And so it's been a couple of years. And so, what have you done? What can share what you will. How is the infinite bank concept? 2 years later. And I'm
gonna tell you the truth. When we first started, I had a debt that I wanted to pay off. I had a little bit more than enough money to pay it off, but I was still kind of hesitant. I said, "Well, I'll just pay on a little more and pay on a little more and get it down." But when I got the infinite banking concept, and and saw how it worked and said, I get in, and before I pay them off with my money, I'll go ahead and make my deposit, then get a loan and pay them off with that money. And then, like, paying myself back for the same amount, draw interest of mine, and use the insurance company's money. And so when I got that concept and started doing like that every day, over this past June was 3 years. Well, we're going to count it to October now. June, July, August, September, October. About 2 months and about 2 years and 4 months, we had used roughly $30,000 of insurance company monies and getting out of debt, getting another car, and stuff like that. Sometimes miscellaneous spending, but we kept the thing going, the payments going to our PUA. And while we use the insurance company's money and paying a lot less interest, not paying no interest to anyone else, getting rid of them. Well, I have just one more that I have to do now, besides my mortgage. One more besides mortgage, and we'll be good to go, be scot-free.
Perfect. So that's a primary thing that you've been doing is like getting out of debt, capturing the debt, and then the car, and then, other things that you were going to spend money on anyway. I got you.
That's right.
And so, you discovered this and you get going about 14 or so years after you retire. And if you had it to do over again, would you do it again?
Would I do it over again? How fast? You mean how fast would I do it over again?
Well, I mean, would you do it over? Yeah. So,
oh yes.
And I know it's a pretty easy question, or it's, of course you would do it over again, right? And then if and it's making a difference in your life, right? Because you're taking over the debt you don't owe them, and you've got your capital and your policies that you control, and you're controlling the loan repayment. You're just practicing the infinite banking concept. You're kicking the bankers and the third-party lenders out of your life. Now, do you think you would have had ears to hear this, 30 years ago or 25 years ago? If you'd have been exposed to it, do you think it would have resonated with you as a younger man?
I think so. If it was explained to me the way that I heard it, I think I would have went with it then. Yeah. When I started working at Firestone in 1976, that's been 47 years ago. I have understood the infinite banking concept then the way I do now. Who knows where I'd have been today in the financial arena?
Sure.
Because 401ks just can't match up with that. There's too much government control, and they claim if the market stay at this percent, 5%, and they talking about a straight percent, 5% straight does not beat 4% compound. I don't think any day, if my math is right. 4% compound beats 5% straight.
Yeah. Yeah, 5% simple interest probably be somewhere around 3.25 or 3.5%. And then 5% compound, it's going to outdo that all day long. And then the whole idea of velocity and volume, that's completely left out of the typical financial planning narrative. Right, they leave the banking function completely out, and they've dumbed it down to the lowest common denominator of rate of return. And yes. People don't, me included, until I read Nelson's book, it was about 18, 19 years ago. I just never considered the banking function at all. And of course, I it was influenced by the narrative of the financial world, looking at a rate of return and safety and liquidity and risk and all of that. But it still boiled down to the basic lowest common denominator, rate of return. And when you leave the banking function out of it, then you never consider the volume of interest. And that's what Nelson said was the problem. It's the volume of interest. So, I was a life insurance agent all the way back to 1991. And, you don't know what you don't know. And if you're closed-minded and not willing to learn or think outside of the box or just challenge your own beliefs, and I'm not saying all beliefs, there's a fundamental philosophy that I think we all have, and you shouldn't necessarily change your fundamental philosophy unless it's wrong. But, it's such a, and I love you. Your daddy had a third grade education. We're not even getting above third grade math when we practice this concept. Just looking at interest compared to volume, because we're considering the banking function, and it's so powerful and it's so simple if we just think along the terms of banking, right? If we think like a banker, not just a consumer. Of course, we're consumers. Of course, we want to be the bank owner. So, of course, we've got to think like a banker. And we start thinking like a banker as opposed to thinking of, life insurance, the pennies in for premium and the biggest death benefit possible for the lowest premium. That's insurance. And okay. But if we talk about banking and get past the life insurance construct of big death benefit, low premium, and focus on the banking function, well, you got to have capital before you can bank. You got to have money, right? So capital formation comes first. And if you look at where you form your capital and build your capital, building your warehouse of wealth in a life insurance policy that's a private asset that you control, that operates, tax deferred and tax free, and compare that to the market that's only focused on the rate of return. So, and then we separate ourselves from our capital when we put money in a qualified plan, until we're 59 and a half. Oh, yeah. We limit the loans. If I have $100,000, balance in a 401k, I can only borrow $50,000, right? It's 50% or $50,000, whichever's least. And so my whole point here is, kind of disconnecting from the paradigm of focusing on a rate of return and just considering the idea, the possibility that you could control the banking function. And if you'll consider that, and then if you'll think through, just like I love your definition that you recited on study, if you consider the banking function and what that could do for you and your family, it's a hands down win. It's a hard hell no not to practice all of those other things, and I'm not disparaging them. I'm just saying that what can be done with the infinite banking concept is incredible. It takes time to build capital, but here you've been going about two years and 4 months, and you've ran $30,000 through your policies, getting rid of debt. That's cool. That's powerful. Would you rather put $30,000 in a 401k and hope that it grows?
I guess anyway. Not.
No. Well, and then too, I want to go back, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. We were kind of talking about 401ks, and man, you were dropping some wisdom on that, talking to some of your friends or acquaintances about 401ks. Will you share that with me again?
Yeah. I was trying to explain to him the infinite banking concept and becoming your own bank. And sometime before you can get into the subject fairly well, people change the conversation talking about what they're doing and what they have. They're really not listening to you. They want you to listen to them. And his fellow said, now he had retired after 25 years, and so he had $200,000 in his 401k. I said, well, that's better than nothing. I said, but relative to what I'm talking about, it's chicken feed when you're talking about the time frame. And so if you take that $200,000 and you divide that by 9,125 days, that's only $21.94 a day. I said, until you divide that by an 8-hour work day, that's $2.73 an hour. I say you very boldly and you vehemently grew your wealth at $2.73 an hour. I said it's nothing to shake a stick at, but when it comes to the time frame, the time is, I say, the most essential aspect of any situation you're ever going to encounter is timing. Another fellow said, well, I had $350,000 in my 401k. Well, I said, well, but you worked 5 years longer than he did. You were 1,825 days longer than he did. And I said, and if you divide your $350,000 by 10,950 days, he said, well, where'd you get that from? I said, that's 30 years times 365 days is 10,950. Just like his 9,125 days, if you do it by the day, you'll see what kind of money you were earning per day. And so I went on up to one fellow with he said a $500,000 without using this as a scenario. I said, if this fellow had $500,000 in his 401k, he worked 15 years less than you and 10 years less than what you did. And he had $300,000 more than you and $150,000 more than you do, and he still didn't have $100 a day. Because if you divide $500,000 by 5,475 days, that only give you $91.26 a day. $91 a day, still even $100 a day. And if you divide that by 8-hour work day, what do you have? $11.41 an hour. So when Warren Buffett said one time in an interview, he said, some people spend and spend and spend, and then they decide they want to count. No, you count and count, and then you spend before you spend. And that's true. And we've all done it.
Oh, yeah.
I have spent money and spent money. There have been times, James, I've done something so stupid I made a tree struck by lightning look like a genius. I went and bought me a nice, beautiful handgun, then had to borrow some money to put gas in my car until I got paid. Is that, Mike Murdoch said, is that not unwise? I mean, we all have done some foolish spending from time to time, But when the financial vicissitudes hit you like a flood, it would keep you thinking before you start spending. There have been some things I wanted to buy right recently, but there's also come to realize there's some more thing that's more important that need to be done first. And my mama ain't here to make me do it. And Betty, I had to get a hold of her. We have to get a hold of each other. But we really sit down and discuss some things now before we do anything that makes sense. But from a positive and faith standpoint, my pastor used to say, you don't have to use the word, I can't afford it right now. I can't afford it, but it's just not wise for me to do this at this time. I don't like that term either. I didn't have enough money to buy a bag of peanuts or Pepsi Cola. I don't like using the term, I can't afford it. The devil is a lie.
That's right. I love that. I love that. Words have meaning. Words have power. If it comes out of your mouth, it's on you. And you don't. And I'm just saying that you shouldn't let stuff like that get on you. I choose not to do that today. Not in my best interest to do that today. I like that. Well, Eugene and I had a lot of fun, but we did go a little bit long, so we're going to end it here, and we'll pick it up from here on the next episode. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.